20% of the world's oil, a major share of the world's liquefied natural gas, and one narrow waterway that can shake the entire global economy. This is the Strait of Hormuz, a small passage between Iran and Oman, but one of the most important energy choke points on Earth. If this route is disrupted, the impact does not stay in the Middle East. It reaches fuel stations, supermarkets, factories, financial markets, and household budgets around the world. Welcome to Econovault. Today, we break down why the Strait of Hormuz matters, how a disruption can create an energy shock, and what it means for your money, your food, your fuel bills, and the global economy. The Strait of Hormuz is a narrow waterway connecting the Persian Gulf with the Gulf of Oman and the Arabian Sea. At its narrowest point, it is only around 33 kilometers wide. But through this small passage flows a massive share of global energy trade. Oil tankers, liquefied natural gas carriers, and key industrial shipments pass through this route every day. That is why this small strip of water has such a huge influence on the world economy. This is not just a shipping route, it is an energy lifeline. A significant portion of global seaborne oil trade passes through the Strait of Hormuz. A large share of liquefied natural gas exports from Qatar also depends on this route. And beyond oil and gas, many industrial and agricultural supply chains are connected to this region. So when the Strait of Hormuz is threatened, the world does not just worry about oil. It worries about inflation, food prices, manufacturing costs, and economic growth. Asia is especially exposed. China, India, Japan, and South Korea rely heavily on energy imports moving through the Persian Gulf. If shipments slow down, import costs can rise quickly. India can face higher fuel and cooking gas pressure. China can face higher industrial energy costs. Japan and South Korea can face pressure on energy security. Europe is also exposed because LNG shipments from Qatar can be affected by instability around this route. When a major choke point like the Strait of Hormuz is disrupted, the first problem is uncertainty. Shipping companies may delay vessels. Insurance costs may rise. Energy traders may price in risk. And countries may start looking for alternative supply routes. But alternative routes cannot fully replace the Strait of Hormuz overnight. That is why even the fear of disruption can move global markets. The most immediate impact is oil prices. When traders believe supply may be disrupted, oil prices often rise fast. Higher oil prices increase transportation costs, shipping costs, airline costs, and production costs. And because oil is used across the economy, the impact spreads quickly. A shock in one narrow waterway can become a shock in the global cost of living. It is not only oil. Liquefied natural gas is also a major concern. Qatar is one of the world's largest LNG exporters, and much of its LNG moves through the Strait of Hormuz. If LNG routes are disrupted, gas markets can tighten. Europe, Asia, and energy-intensive industries can face higher costs. This can affect electricity bills, heating bills, factory output, and business margins. For ordinary consumers, the first visible impact can appear at the gas station. When crude oil rises, gasoline and diesel prices often follow. That means commuting becomes more expensive. Deliveries become more expensive. Air travel can become more expensive, and when transportation costs rise, many goods become more expensive too. Here is the part many people miss. An energy crisis can also become a food crisis. Fertilizer production depends heavily on energy. Fertilizer shipments depend on global trade routes, and farmers depend on affordable inputs to grow crops. If fertilizer costs rise, food production costs can rise. And if food production costs rise, grocery prices can rise for families everywhere. The impact also reaches manufacturing. Chemicals, metals, plastics, transportation, and industrial production all depend on energy. When energy prices rise, factories face higher costs. When shipping becomes risky, supply chains become slower and more expensive. This is how a regional crisis can spread into global manufacturing and trade. The biggest economic danger is inflation. If fuel, food, electricity, and shipping costs all rise together, inflation can return. Central banks then face a difficult choice. If they raise interest rates to fight inflation, economic growth can slow. But if they do not act, prices can keep rising. That is why energy shocks are so dangerous for the global economy. The word economists fear most is stagflation. Stagflation means prices rise while economic growth slows. People pay more for basic goods. Businesses face higher costs. Consumers reduce spending and the economy weakens. This is exactly the kind of risk that can emerge from a major energy shock. Financial markets react quickly to this kind of uncertainty. Oil and energy stocks may rise. Gold and defensive assets may attract investors. Airlines, transport companies, and energy-intensive businesses may come under pressure. Growth stocks can also struggle if inflation fears push interest rates higher. In short, investors start repricing risk across the entire market. Scenario 1 is a short disruption. The Strait remains risky for a few days or weeks, but shipping gradually resumes. Oil prices spike, then begin to cool. The global economy takes a hit, but avoids a deeper crisis. This is the best-case scenario. Scenario 2 is a medium disruption. Shipping remains uncertain for several months. Energy prices stay elevated. Asia pays more for imports. Europe faces gas pressure. Food and transportation costs rise. In this case, inflation becomes more persistent and some economies may move closer to recession. Scenario 3 is a severe disruption. The Strait remains restricted for a long period. Oil prices move sharply higher. Food prices rise. Inflation returns globally, and central banks face pressure at the worst possible time. This is the scenario that could create a serious global stagflation risk. For consumers, the message is simple. Watch fuel prices. Watch grocery prices. Watch electricity and heating costs. An energy shock does not only affect investors and governments, it affects daily life. The cost of driving, eating, heating, and transporting goods can all move higher. For investors, the key is risk management. Energy companies may benefit from higher oil prices. Gold and defensive assets may gain attention during uncertainty, but sectors that depend heavily on fuel, travel, shipping, and cheap financing may face pressure. In a crisis like this, the market does not only ask who benefits, it asks who is most exposed. For businesses, this is a supply chain warning. Companies need to understand their exposure to fuel, shipping, electricity, raw materials, and imported goods. A small cost increase in energy can become a big cost increase across production and delivery. That is why smart businesses monitor geopolitical risk before it becomes a balance sheet problem. The world has faced oil shocks before. In 1973, in 1979, in 1990. Each time, energy markets were disrupted. Each time, inflation and growth were affected. And each time, ordinary people felt the impact before the crisis was over. The Strait of Hormuz is small on the map, but economically, it is enormous. What happens in this narrow waterway can affect fuel prices in America, food prices in India, factory costs in China, gas prices in Europe, and inflation around the world. That is why the world watches the Strait of Hormuz so closely. At Econovault, we explain the economic stories behind global headlines.